You know, I saved small businesses across Michigan with our paid sick leave plan, which was a big thing. We saved paid sick leave for Michigan workers, but we also ensured they have a job. We saved the restaurant industry. We protected tip workers. So the bankers are giving me their Legislator of the Year award. I'll bring it next week to the press conference and show you. Do you guys see this beautiful sledgehammer? I wish this camera could pan. Look at that. We displayed it very nice, didn't we? Yep. School groups can come in here and see that, along with the Restaurant and Lodging Association Legislator of the Year, the Small Business Association of Michigan Legislator of the Year, all these MERS awards. You know, they even gave me many times Economic Development Legislator of the Year. I know a lot about that, but you guys will love the, I'll bring it and show it to you next week, the Banker of the Year. I'm gonna look at this podium. Let me see this. Look at this, Newsmaker of the Year. Now, I told our people, I said it wasn't bold enough last week. It wasn't bold enough, so we put the bold letters, Newsmaker of the Year. We know the credible news publications are recognizing me as their Newsmaker of the Year, like Cranes. Very excited about that. You know, I know a lot of people are still, I mean, everyone's anticipating what is the Midwesterner going to do. It's a very prestigious award to be the Newsmaker of the Year. Very good thing. So I'm happy about that. But and by the way, what a great job Ann Bolin is doing, our House Appropriations Chair. Many of you saw her yesterday testifying in front of Congress, talking about election integrity and the need for election integrity in Michigan and across the country. I thought Ann did an outstanding job talking about our out-of-control Secretary of State, Jocelyn Benson, somebody that is doing a horrible job of managing our voter rolls. You know, they're telling me there are more people on the voter rolls than there are people that are eligible to vote in Michigan. They're dead people, they're illegal aliens. You saw what the Macomb County Clerk found, a bunch of people that are illegal aliens on the voter rolls. You see dead people, you see people that move from other states. Remember, we got that Auditor General audit a few years ago that made it very clear there were a lot of people that were over 112 years old, older than the oldest living person, that are on the voter rolls. They're probably older than that now. They're probably like 116 years old because it's been so long. So we got to clean up the voter rolls. We had a very bad ruling by a judge that got it wrong. You got to get a fair judge. This was not a good judge decision. I'm very hopeful it'll be appealed, and the federal government will prevail in getting Michigan's voter list and ensuring running the proper checks and clearing our voter rolls. We'll be filing a brief, an amicus brief in the appeal. It's very important that we clean our voter rolls, that we get integrity on our voter list in Michigan. You saw last week the House pass a House resolution calling on Congress to pass the SAVE Act or the MEGA Act, or an act that will ensure voter ID to vote, that will ensure that our voter rolls are clean, that we remove dead people, illegal aliens, that we remove people that moved out of state. Everybody should know that there shouldn't be more people on this list than eligible people. So we're going to continue to work to clean our voter rolls, get ID to vote, and bring election integrity to Michigan. And I thought Ann Bolin did a great job yesterday. And then today, you know, we have the budget presentation, and Ann is back, and after the presentation, I'm sure she'll have a lot to say. But this has been a pretty big 2 days for Ann Bolin. You know, coming off of winning the Bob Williams Award from ALEC for fiscal responsibility, something that I hope she shares some of that wisdom with Jen Flood today, because what I'm hearing about the Democrat budget proposal, it's not eligible for the Bob Williams Fiscal Responsibility Award, that's for sure. Something that Ann Bolin proudly won, National Award for Fiscal Responsibility. Now, this is a snapshot of what this would look like if Democrats ran everything. And you know they're giving me credit for Justin Verlander signing with the Tigers. Did you see that? They said, this never happened under a Democrat trifecta. I saw that out there. Well, I appreciate that. But, you know, like, where was he? California? You know, what do you think about California's tax structure? Not very good. You probably talked to the AFP in California. It's horrible. You want to come somewhere like Michigan where you have fiscal responsibility, which is something Ann Bolin and I and the House Republicans have brought to Michigan. We cut $800 million of waste, fraud, and abuse in the last budget. The 2,000 ghost workers, the fake workers. We cut all kinds of wasteful grant programs, and we cut $800 million from that budget. They gave us the award for best fiscal responsibility in the country. We even got Gretchen Whitmer to sign no tax on tips, overtime, and Social Security, something that was applauded when I was at the White House yesterday. They recognized what we're doing in Michigan, amplifying President Trump's working families tax cut. No tax on tips, overtime, Social Security, on your federal and your state taxes. And when people are filing their tax returns, they're going to get huge returns because of it. So that was some great work there. But I'll say, you know, we have more to do. We have more to cut. I'm looking at this budget proposal, and I appreciate the media. You know, they're kind of leaking some things out, and I know a little bit more about it than some of you guys do. But I'll just say this. You know, we, in that budget deal, which, by the way, the consensus is the House Republicans, the Republicans, under my leadership, we won the budget deal last year. We won that. It was a model for fiscal responsibility across the country. Not only did we provide tax relief, no tax on tips, overtime, Social Security, we took that $800 million of waste, fraud, and abuse, and we permanently dedicated it to roads. In doing so, all of us purposely created this revenue shortfall. Now, you look at the revenue shortfall, they call it a revenue shortfall. Most people would call it giving your money back to the people, right? We're cutting taxes, which means more money for people, because people are going to spend this money much better than the government if you look at all the waste, fraud, and abuse we've uncovered in this budget. So instead of spending it on more waste, fraud, and abuse, we're saying give it back to the people. The people need this money. Well, in Lansing, they call that a revenue shortfall. And they say, we need to pull from our state's rainy day fund, which is supposed to be for an economic downturn. They say, well, because we're giving tax relief to the people, we need to now pull our rainy day fund. That's ridiculous. No responsible budget proposal should pull from our rainy day fund right now. We purposely put ourselves in this position. If you look at the Revenue Estimating Conference, and they had some economists from the University of Michigan, the economists from the University of Michigan, they said the economy in Michigan is stable. They said that this budget shortfall is being caused by no tax on tips, overtime, Social Security. We're returning more money to the people. And they said that the rest is because we permanently took money from the general fund and we dedicated it to roads. And you heard Rachel Eubanks repeat that. You heard Jen Flood repeat that. They all said that. You guys quoted it. So our economy is in stable position. The other thing the University of Michigan economists said, last year they claimed that we were going to lose thousands of jobs because of the tariffs. This year they revised their study and they said actually the tariffs are causing an increase in 4,800 manufacturing jobs in Michigan's automotive manufacturing. And they actually said most of the cost increase is on foreign cars. That's the point, right? When you have tariffs, you're trying to disincentivize the purchase of foreign cars and foreign components, and you're trying to incentivize the purchase of domestic cars in Michigan and domestic manufacturing. And we're seeing that's exactly what's happening. There are tens of thousands of new cars that are going to be produced in Michigan, according to the University of Michigan study that they presented at the Revenue Estimating Conference. This is the official position of the state of Michigan in their Revenue Estimating Conference. They're saying tariffs are creating jobs in the Michigan automotive manufacturing industry. There's tens of thousands. I think it was like 70-some thousand new cars, the demand, domestic cars. And so that's a good thing. The tariffs are working. So it's a good thing. But anyway, as we look through this budget proposal, this is not, there's no need to pull from the rainy day fund. And they're telling me that the Whitmer administration is going to propose many new state workers. So they're going to propose a significant increase to the number of state workers. I don't want to steal all their thunder, but I'll just say they're going to propose a lot of new state workers. We have another 3,000 plus ghost employees in state government that Ann Bolin and I have identified. These are fake workers. They don't list these jobs. They use them to pad programs and inflate programs. Just like we cut 2,000 ghost workers last year without laying off one state worker, we can cut another 3,000 plus ghost workers this year. That's over $300 million that we can save just by getting rid of the fake workers instead of adding workers. We should not be adding workers and then taking from the rainy day fund and raising taxes. It's ridiculous. And I've reviewed a number of these tax increase proposals when we were talking about roads. They're not going to happen. We're not going to raise taxes on vape and alternative nicotine products and other tobacco products. We're not going to do a delivery tax. We're not going to raise taxes on internet gaming. We're not going to do any of that. There will be no tax increases in this budget when we do this deal. Instead, we're going to have to live within our means, just like the people of Michigan do. When they have increased expenses, they don't, hopefully they don't borrow a lot of money. Hopefully what they do is they live within their means, right? We live within our means. We make the cuts. And we all know government has grown well over 40% since Whitmer's become governor. We're going to have to live within our means. The COVID money is gone. That's running out. We put money from the general fund into better priorities like roads instead of waste, fraud, and abuse. Now we've got to do the rest of the plan. We've got to make more cuts. And I've told you it's really about 1.2, 1.3 billion that we have to cut, and that's with adding nothing and with no tax cuts, okay? And that's because you have the ongoing and the one-time, and I'll explain that to you another day. But from the ongoing base budget, they're saying it's about 800 million, most of which will have to come from either departments or universities or schools. I mean, that's what you got to do in the ongoing budget. Now, I don't want to cut schools. I support probably increasing funding for schools, just like I've done every year. I voted every year to increase funding for schools. You know, we'll look at the universities, but ultimately, you've got to cut the departments, and there's a lot to cut there. So what I'm disappointed in, my understanding is we're not going to see any cuts in this budget. There'll be things in the one time that surprise you that go away. You'll probably see like Going Pro, that's out. You'll probably see some of the arts and culture grants out. You'll probably see some of the multicultural line out. A lot of those things that were not part of the ongoing base budget last year, you'll probably, if you look through that list of everything that's one time, that's a 500 plus million. All the pork projects, it's out. Okay, that's all out. And I would encourage you to look at that list to see what's out. Because what I would say, most of the things that the lobbyists and the Lansing insiders talk about up here is all out automatically. And then you've got to cut 800 million, mostly from departments or maybe universities. So you're looking at that and saying, we did this last year. I mean, we cut $800 million from the budget last year. We can do it again. I just told you there's 300 million right there with the 3,000 fake workers, the ghost employees. We can go through, we can look through all these wasteful grants. We can look through the economic development programs. We can continue to not spend money as there's attrition with state workers. We can look through and really scrutinize these IT programs. These IT programs, hundreds of millions of dollars in the IT programs. It never ends. They never end, these IT programs. We got to look at those. And ultimately, we've got to look at a lot of these department programs and measure every one of them and say, are we getting value for the taxpayers? That's what Ann Bolin and the House Republicans, that's what we're going to do. We're going to get value for your dollars in this budget. We're not going to raise taxes. We're not going to raid the rainy day fund. We're going to go and we're going to cut the waste, fraud, and abuse in government, and there's a lot of it. I mean, I'm learning more and more about all the Medicaid fraud that's going on. I'm learning more about all the SNAP fraud that's going on. You guys know that Michigan is getting penalized, possibly, for all of the fraud in the SNAP program. It's hundreds of millions of dollars that we could get penalized because we're paying out so much fraud in our SNAP program. So we need to get to work and we need to figure out what are the root causes of all this fraud. Are we doing all of the proper checks that we need to do in order to make sure that we're only paying out to people that are eligible for these benefits? It makes sense. The federal government gives us a lot of money for these programs, and we match some of it. And then we're paying out all this fraud. And then they're saying, look, if you're going to pay out all this fraud, then we're going to fine you until you stop paying out all this fraud. This is taxpayer money. Just because we give it to you doesn't mean you should give it out in fraud. So we've got to really scrutinize that. And Jason Wolford has been doing a great job of that on his committee, looking into these programs, finding the fraud. I know our members, Matt Maddock and John Roth, Phil Green, they're going to be looking into it on the appropriations side, all the fraud in our SNAP program and our Medicaid program. I had some great conversations with people at the White House yesterday about things we can do to identify the fraud, to reduce the fraud. So we're going to be bringing all those things forward in this budget. Ultimately, we've got to cut the waste, fraud, and abuse, and we've got to set better priorities. We can't raid the rainy day fund. We can't raise taxes. This is not the time to do it. I do applaud Governor Whitmer for hearing me on property tax. I've put forward a property tax. I've said this is going to be the #1 issue this year, property tax reform. She proposes a very limited property tax reform that benefits some seniors. I think that's a positive step. But our plan, when you see it, is going to be much more robust, much more impactful. Our plan, people are going to feel. Our homeowners across the state, they're going to feel it. Our renters are going to feel it. It's going to be significant property tax relief. People are going to have more money in their pockets because of the property tax relief that I get done with the House Republicans. But I give the governor credit because I'll go back to like the sick leave and the tip credit, something I'm getting the award from the bankers for because of my work on. You look at it with the sick leave and the tip credit, when we did the walk-off, the Democrats would not put a plan on the table for sick leave, tip credit, or roads. And we just said, we're not going to come here and do all kinds of bills that are going to cause more unemployment in Michigan, cause more small businesses to close, cause more employers to choose other states. We're not going to do that. If you want to deal with roads, saving the restaurant industry, or protecting paid sick leave and ensuring people have jobs, we'll do it. Well, no plans were on the table. Fast forward to when I became Speaker, we started seeing the Democrats put plans on the table on sick leave and tip credit. When I put forward and passed a bill through the chamber to deliver roads, funding for roads, I challenged Governor Whitmer in her last State of the State. I said, put your plan on the table. And I give her credit. She did. Shortly after her State of the State, she put a plan on the table. When the other side puts a plan on the table, then we can negotiate. When they don't have a position on your issue, then you can't negotiate. They don't know. They're just scrambling. I mean, we saw that with the Senate Democrats last year. They never had a roads plan. So they weren't at the table when we made a deal. And Governor Whitmer said I was the only leader that had the guts and the brains to put a plan on the table on roads and get it done. And I give MERS credit. MERS actually wrote something. You probably wrote it. It was very good today. It pointed out that Matt Hall shepherded the $2 billion roads plan through the legislature. That's true. And I think it's great that the governor is celebrating that today in her budget proposal. You look at it, all we're doing is putting out a budget that shows all of the things that are because of the deal I made last year. Roads, we knew that was going to be in there. We knew there was $2 billion for roads. We knew there was no tax on tip overtime Social Security. That was all announced in the budget deal. So when you see the budget and that stuff's in there and they're celebrating it, well, yeah, we knew that was in there. Just like how we knew that there was going to be this budget shortfall, okay? But we don't raid the rainy day fund to pay for it. We don't raise taxes. We knew what we were going to do then, right? We discussed as a group at that time we were going to have to make cuts. And I give Jen Flood and Rachel Eubanks credit for saying that we knew this was going to happen. I'm just shocked that their solution was raiding the rainy day fund and raising taxes, something we're not going to do. We can do this within our existing $80-some billion budget. It's 81.5 this year. And by the way, we passed a budget last year smaller than this year. That's one of the reasons I'm the Newsmaker of the Year. No one thought we could do that. That's never happened except for like wartime depressions and significant economic downturns. We did it last year. We're going to do it again this year. And the numbers say that's what we have to do. So, you know, we're not going to do their taxes. We're not going to add workers. We're going to cut ghost employees. We're not going to raid the rainy day fund. But I will say, I have a very robust plan on property tax that I'll release very soon that's going to make real relief for people, many hundreds of dollars of relief. And we'll work with the governor now that she has a proposal. So I appreciate her, you know, seeing what we're doing on property tax and putting something out there, and we'll make a deal. I'm more confident now than ever we're going to get a deal that's going to give property tax relief to the people of Michigan, something that's really needed during this time where costs are an issue coming off of 4 years of Biden. Because, you know, you think about it, under Biden, the property taxes went up like 5% a year, or 4 years of Biden, that's 20% higher. People are feeling that. We got to roll that back, and we will. And I appreciate the governor putting out a proposal so we can make a deal. You know, I do appreciate what the governor is proposing on literacy. You know, the governor was very clear early on. Her priority was literacy. That's good. My priority is property tax reform. But she has a plan on literacy. There's a lot of things in this plan that the House Republicans agree with. We can look to what Mississippi did, which is one of the model states now for a third grade reading. They did two things. They made early investments in education. They also put accountability in place so they could measure it. So I appreciate what the governor's proposing on the early investments. And we got to match that with some accountability, which we will. We'll put that forward very soon, both. And then we've got to move up this phonics law. This phonics law, you think about it, when does it take effect? 27, 28? You know, we got to get it to take effect earlier, and we've got to give everyone the tools to learn how to teach phonics. We want our teachers to know how to teach it. We need to make it the official standard of Michigan. We got to get it in earlier. And I think we can make a deal with the governor to do that. So I'm very encouraged by that. I think it's a very good thing. And I think there's some good things there. You know, I was very disappointed that the governor is joining these other Democrat governors in refusing to meet with President Trump, I believe, next week at the White House for their dinner. One of the things that I really appreciated about Governor Whitmer last year is that Governor Whitmer rose above these other Democrat governors and really forged a relationship with President Trump and myself. That really helped me and the Republicans, and working with her to get some major wins for Michigan. You look at what we did, getting a new fighter mission for Michigan at Selfridge Air National Guard Base. We now have an aggressive timeline that we're trying to meet to ensure that these fighter planes come in while President Trump is still in office. We're going to continue to work with the governor and the president to make that happen. But I'm very concerned about the governor kind of falling into the rank and file Democrat governors and not rising above that and doing what she did last year, which was being somebody that could help us advocate for Michigan. I just look at what we did on the Asian carp, how we're making progress on the Asian carp because of the work the governor and I did. We're working on the FEMA issue, trying to get more FEMA money for northern Michigan for the ice storm. I think that's really important. We got a great approval from the president. We're very grateful. I know we're working on an appeal to see if we can get more of that for northern Michigan. I'm very supportive of that. But again, with Governor Whitmer not rising above these other Democrat governors and kind of falling into this group with Pritzker and some of the others of just boycotting, that's not how we're going to get things done. So I hope she'll rethink that. I hope she'll go meet with President Trump next week and continue to advocate for Michigan. I would hate for this to go back to Whitmer in the first term, where Governor Whitmer was actually kind of an anchor, causing problems for us, making it harder for us to get things done. I thought last year she was very helpful in embracing Trump, working with Trump, meeting with Trump, talking to Trump, rising above these other Democrat governors. And now that we're in a campaign year, she seems to be going back to what some of the other governors are doing. I think some of the work the governor did last year is really helping us, like with the ice enforcement. I mean, you see in Michigan, we don't have some of the problems that Minnesota has on the ice enforcement. And you have to give the governor some credit for that, for working with the president, having a good relationship with the president. And you see ICE is operating in Michigan very well. They're making arrests, and we don't have the kind of uprising that you saw in Minnesota. But if you have Democrat governors like Walz that are adversarial, it creates more problems for everyone. So I hope the governor will rethink that and meet with Trump next week and continue to meet with Trump and be a partner like she was last year to help us get some good things done with the president. I think that would go a long way. What I found is that when the governor and I are aligned and we're pushing for the same things, we get very good results, but I'm concerned that she's jeopardizing that right now. So I hope she doesn't. We had some very good meetings at the White House yesterday. Michigan was the first state that they invited in to talk with cabinet secretaries, to meet with the Domestic Policy Council, to meet with people in the intergovernmental affairs agencies for the White House. I really credit that to the great relationship that Eric Nesbitt and I have forged with the president and his administration. I would say across the country, there's probably no two legislative leaders that have a better relationship than myself and Eric Nesbitt with the president and his team. And you saw that because we were the first group they invited in this year to meet and talk about the concerns of Michigan. When I was there, I had a number of private meetings. There were also some group meetings. You probably saw some pictures from some of those group meetings. But we were very happy to meet with Jamison Greer, the U.S. Trade Representative, Kelly Loeffler, the Small Business Administration lead, Chris Wright, the Secretary of Energy, Howard Lutnick, the Commerce Secretary, and many others. So we're very happy to do that. I thought we had some really good conversations with them. I would say in particular, I wanted to thank in person Secretary Wright for listening to us on keeping that coal plant open in West Michigan. That was really important, the Campbell plant. Myself and Luke Meerman and Roger Victory and a few others, we sent a letter early in the administration explaining this coal plant was about to close, and they needed to issue an emergency order to keep it open. They did that, and Secretary Wright said, I didn't even know about this. I got your letter, and because of that, I said, let's look into this, and they listened to us. They kept that coal plant open, and one thing that we learned there is this was very critical, especially those last few weeks when things were very cold. What we're learning is Michigan's, the Midwest grid, they call it MISO, is very fragile. There's not a lot of extra bandwidth on that baseline energy load, and especially at times like that where we're going through several very cold weeks. Because of that coal plant, we didn't have the blackouts and the brownouts. If we didn't have that coal plant, we would have likely had very significant problems with our energy for Michigan and for the Midwest. And so that's one of the key reasons we wanted to keep that plant open. I think if you look into that honestly and you research that, you'll find that coal plant made a big difference. And you don't hear people, they don't come out they don't come out and do a press conference and say, you know, see, this is why we did the coal plant. When things go right, nobody says anything. But if that coal plant wasn't there, you guys would all be writing about significant problems in Michigan with power during a very, very critical time. So I want to appreciate, I really appreciate what Secretary Wright did there. Very excited about the work that he's doing to reopen Palisades. We're very happy about that, and looking forward to that happening very soon. That'll be the first nuclear plant that reopens in this country. So that'll be a very good thing, and we are grateful for his leadership there. I'm also grateful for his leadership on the Line 5 issue. That's critical to getting the resources that are needed on energy to the Upper Peninsula. It's very important, and I appreciate his leadership there. You saw an environmental impact study come out, and I think we're going to continue forward to get that Line 5 solidified and moving forward under his leadership and under President Trump's leadership. You know, very grateful for the time with Howard Lutnick, you know, we talked about the bridge. I'm very supportive of what President Trump is doing on the bridge. You look at, you have an American bridge, you have this other bridge. We've survived all this time with one bridge. Many people think we only need one bridge, but in order to get the second bridge open, they need President Trump to issue a presidential permit. And I think him and some others are looking at this and saying, we can get a better deal for the people of Michigan. You know, President Trump is the ultimate deal maker. So I look at that and say, if you can get a better deal for Michigan, let's get a better deal. You know, you look at what the Canadians are doing with agriculture and our dairy farmers, putting unfair barriers to trade there. This was something that they had committed to fix during an earlier period of time. They never fixed it. You look at, you know, and they're literally boycotting American liquor on the shelves all over Canada. There's several other things going on. There's some conflict over the tech companies. So there's a lot of conflict on the trade between the U.S. and Canada. We need Canada to come to the table as a partner, open up their markets, and have true free trade between the countries. I think President Trump has found the right leverage point to bring them to the table and get a deal that'll open up markets. And then if he can get a deal that actually brings money in on the bridge, I like that, because we're never going to get paid on this bridge. Now, I know that they paid for the bridge, okay, but we're never going to get paid on this bridge. You know, with them reimbursing their cost on the bridge and interest, we're never going to get paid on this bridge. It'll be decades before we ever get paid on this bridge. So if President Trump can make a deal that brings revenue in to Michigan and the United States, that's a great deal for us. You know, you look at this, you look at budget proposals like Whitmer's, and they just propose tax increases, right? But if we can get money, we don't need to raise taxes on Michigan workers in order to get more revenue. You know, tariffs create revenue. These tolls will create revenue. And those are all pieces that we can put together to have the revenue we need. You can actually probably increase revenue and cut taxes. You know, I'm very hopeful that we'll see a tariff dividend from President Trump. You know, so people, I mean, I talked about how under the tariffs we're increasing jobs. But if we, you know, we're making so much money off these tariffs, if we can actually give a tariff dividend back to the people so they really, everyone is sharing in this benefit of the tariffs, people are going to understand this. So I applaud those efforts, I support those efforts, and I do have confidence we'll make a deal. You know, I also spoke to the Jameson Greer, the U.S. Trade Representative, about that in Canada as well, and a lot about China. There's a lot of things going on in China. But I think the administration's done a real good job of opening up new markets and getting good fair trade deals, and free trade but fair trade, but also bringing in a lot of new revenue into the United States, something people don't talk about. So I've got a lot of other things, but I know you got to go to budget presentation, so I'll stop there and answer any questions. Any questions? Yeah, go ahead, Travers.
Will RX kids get any
We're not going to support more funding for ARC's kids in the budget, so we're not going to do that. You know, RX Kids is continuing to be a scam. I really think we should look at Michigan State University carefully at this. They're administering the program. And really what we're seeing is this program is it's a bunch of left-wing groups, Soros-backed groups. If I had to guess, they went to this doctor, and she's a front for this thing, this Flint doctor. But they're paying out benefits to illegal aliens, right? They're using this program to subsidize illegal aliens. And the way our immigration laws work, if you have a baby in the United States, you get to the front of the line. So if you're an illegal alien and you want to get citizenship status, you come to Michigan, you get an unconditional, no strings attached payment through pregnancy, guaranteed income, probably through your first year, and then you have a baby, and then you get to the front of the line. This is how they're going to get more and more illegal aliens to Michigan, and how they're going to register them to vote. This is what they're doing. And you saw that they're studying their voting habits. They're trying to figure out basically how do we get, you know, some of them are illegal aliens. How do we bring them here, give them guaranteed income, and register them to vote and get them to vote for Democrats? That's what they're doing. You see Jocelyn Benson's husband is one of the leaders of this. It's very concerning. You don't think he wants to get more Democrats to vote in Michigan? So we're looking at this and very concerned. I really think someone should look into Michigan State. They shouldn't be administering this program. I think people would be very disappointed to know that Michigan State is administering a program to give welfare to illegal aliens. But beyond that, you know, this is a conversation about what I was talking about earlier in this, okay? So our other cash welfare programs and the ones that I'm trying to fund, and I want to point this out, our current year, we have a shortfall in our regular cash welfare programs, and they're not spending the RX Kids money. So we clawed it back, and we said, we're going to claw this back, and we're going to spend this on the actual cash assistance programs that have checks and eligibility requirements. And you look at some of these things like this WIC program, okay? So in order to get the welfare, you know, you have to spend it on things, whether it's food, whether it's formula, you know, things that are responsible things for, you know, mothers to spend the money on. You know, what this is, you know, you have to have an income threshold, right? So you have to have a legitimate financial need, and you have to spend this money, whether it's the food stamps, whether it's the cash welfare, you know, whether it's the WIC program. You have to spend this money on approved items, okay? What RX Kids is we're just going to give you a check. You spend it on whatever you want. They could spend it on drugs. They could spend it on all kinds of things, right? No one, I mean, they could spend it on responsible things, but I bet you some of them would spend it on very irresponsible things. And you'd say, why are the taxpayers paying a new mother to spend money on drugs? I mean, like, you could take the money, you could buy alcohol and drugs. You know what I mean? So that's why the traditional cash welfare programs ensure, number one, there's an income need, and then they try to structure it toward approved items, food, formula, diapers, things like that, right? That's what we're talking about here. And I think the taxpayers of Michigan would rather have a program that gives to people that have a financial need and ensures they're spending them on responsible things that are going to help with a baby developing healthy, you know? So this RX Kids is a scam, and we're not going to fund it anymore. And we're going to continue to look into it and show what a scam it is. But you know, as I look through it, we need to have programs that have checks. I mean, we're looking at Medicaid fraud in this state, and you know, we'll have more on this later. But you know, when you have people just self-attesting, they call it self-attestation. You just fill out a form. They say, "Are you eligible?" You say yes. You get the money automatically. There's a lot of fraud going on there, in our welfare system. So we need to be doing more. We need to go the other way. We need to be doing more to verify eligibility for all these benefits, because what you're seeing is the Democrats now are proposing tax increases and raiding the rainy day fund. That's what they're proposing. But they don't want to make sure that we're only paying eligible people welfare. They don't want to check to see if illegal aliens are getting welfare. My understanding is there's quite a few millionaires on SNAP. They're getting food stamps. So we're going to do that and raise your taxes. So there's a lot we can do through working with the Trump administration, sharing our data with them. We can even just do it internally and use some of these new federal databases to match it against dead people, felons, illegal aliens, and start removing these people from our rolls. And these are all things you're going to see House Republicans fighting for in this new budget. We need to do better at ensuring eligibility for these welfare programs, because I'll say, we're having to raise your taxes on these proposals. The Democrats are proposing raising your taxes and raiding the rainy day fund, rather than just saying, let's check eligibility and let's protect these welfare programs for the people they were intended for. And they're intended for the truly needy people. They're not for able-bodied adults in their parents' basement that don't want to work. And that's why we want work requirements. You know, if you're getting Medicaid, seek work. If you're looking for food stamps, seek work, education, volunteer your time if you're an able-bodied adult. We can't have people on this system for years and years and years. Yeah, Beth?
You mentioned earlier that you wouldn't support a delivery tax. Is it your impression that there's going to be a delivery tax in place?
Well, they have all kinds of taxes. I've looked at all of their proposals when I was you know, remember, they put all their tax proposals on the menu, so I'm sure they'll pick some sampling of those proposals in their budget presentation. And if the delivery tax is one of them, we're not going to do it. Just like we wouldn't do their, remember they wanted to do their digital advertising tax. But you think about that, every time you get like Uber Eats or what do they call it, like DoorDash, any of this, they're going to tax you every time, more tax. You know, on every delivery, they bring a package to your house, they're going to tax you. That adds up, all because they don't want to take the illegal aliens and these scammers off the welfare rolls, and they don't want to eliminate fake ghost employees, and they don't want to make tough cuts about IT programs, and they want to add all kinds of new workers, and they want to keep growing government, and they don't want to cut a single thing. We got to live within our means. Yeah, go ahead.
So you've very clearly stated that you wouldn't support any tax.
Right.
Are you against revenue proposals?
No, like I said, I mean, if we can make revenue off the tolls from this bridge, that would be a new revenue proposal I would support. And President Trump, he might get us some of that revenue if we make a better deal on the bridge. So that would be an example of new revenue I would support. You know, in the past, I mean, when they're, you know, with the internet gaming, I mean, that was a new thing that we put on the market. That wasn't something that was allowed in Michigan, and they put a tax on it, and that brought in revenue. Now, there's some principles of taxation that you got to look at. I mean, you don't want to put an excessive tax on it, but when you introduce a new thing into the market and you put some kind of a excise tax on it, that's fair and reasonable and in line with other excise taxes, you know, I would support that. I don't know of an example of that. There were some conversations about doing that with this hemp, but you know, the federal government banned that in the One Big Beautiful Bill. So we wouldn't do that because, you know, why would you do that if it's going to be banned, you know? Yeah, go ahead.
I guess more specifically, are you open to any revenue increases in the governor's budget to tobacco, gaming, vapes, regional ads as a way?
No, I said no. No, I said no. None of those. Huh? I can't hear you.
Would you support it as a way to bolster Medicaid or any other social service?
Yeah, well, you know, I saved Medicaid. The House Republicans saved Medicaid. I mean, we're getting all of our Medicaid funding You know, Winnie Brinks and others were whining and whining about Medicaid, and I got to work with Greg Van Werkum. We rolled up our sleeves and we said, we just have to make minor changes to our Medicaid system and we get all the money. We're getting all the money. I mean, I went to a bill signing where I was with Governor Whitmer and Brinks, and we were celebrating how we saved Medicaid for Michigan and we got all the money. And now they're complaining about Medicaid, and the reason is because they don't like the work requirements. They're concerned that work requirements are going to kick ineligible people off welfare. Well, we don't want able-bodied adults living in their parents' basements getting Medicaid and food stamps and welfare. So we want to protect these systems for the people that they're intended for, and what you're going to see in the budget presentation is Medicaid has gotten more expensive. The interesting thing about Medicaid, by the way, no one is alleging credibly that there will be less money for Medicaid. What they're talking about is how fast is Medicaid going to grow, okay? So Medicaid is growing under everybody's plan. The question is, how fast is it going to grow? And this is one of the parts of the budget that's growing the fastest. And as Medicaid grows, we want to ensure that Medicaid, food stamps, all the welfare programs are available for the people that they were intended for. The eligible people, people that are down on hard times and have a financial need. That's why the RX Kids is the wrong approach. They're saying, we're just going to give welfare to people without any eligibility checks, no strings attached, and we're not going to look at how they spend the money. Well, as they continue to scale up that program and ask for more and more and more, that program will be one of our biggest spends in government, and that's not the right approach. We don't need to spend more money on welfare. We should be spending more money on roads, education, and public safety, the true basic core needs of state government. Yeah, back here.
Election administration gets to talk about the roles and election processes on the state level. I'm wondering if you have any thoughts on the president's suggestion to federalize elections?
Yeah, we talked about that a few weeks ago, we support I support President Trump. I think that they kind of clarified that remark and indicated that what he's referring to is the SAVE Act. You saw that we passed a House resolution supporting the SAVE Act or something like it, whether it's the SAVE Act or the MEGA Act, the Make Elections Great Again Act. I'm hopeful that the House will move on that very soon and they'll get a deal with the Senate, and we'll have something that really ensures some federal oversight over elections through making sure the voter rolls are secure, making sure states have voter ID, because in these elections, Congress has purview over federal elections, and these elections are blended between federal races and state races, and so we're hopeful the SAVE Act passes, and I believe that's what President Trump was referring to based on some later clarifications that I saw. Yeah, Remington.
Speaker Hall, how confident from what you've seen in this budget do you think that you can get one on time this year?
Well, I think you'll see House Republicans come forward with a plan, and we'll pass it through the House, and then we'll do our best to make a deal. But I think whether we make a deal early or late depends on how dug in the Democrats are on increasing taxes, raiding the rainy day fund, and doing nothing about these growing out-of-control welfare programs where we're seeing illegal aliens, we're seeing ineligible people getting welfare. We need to rein that in, and we need to ensure the welfare is going to the people it's eligible for. So we're going to have to cut. We did it last year. We cut $800 million from departments last year. We can do it again this year. I've already found $5 billion of waste, fraud, and abuse in the system. We can cut $800 million of that. So if the Democrats will come back to reality and cut waste, fraud, and abuse, drop the tax increases, and also stop with the rainy day fund raid, keep that for a true rainy day, then we'll get a deal. If they're dug in on raising taxes and spending more than we take in, then it's going to go on for a while, because we're going to hold the line on that. We have a responsibility to the taxpayers of Michigan to get the best value for their dollars. And we're looking at property tax relief. We're looking at many things to make life more affordable for people. And we're going to do healthcare reform too. We're going to get to the bottom of these growing healthcare costs. They're out of control, and we're going to do something to make healthcare more affordable. Yeah, Beth.
When you met with Nick yesterday, did he say anything about meeting with Manny Moore?
No, I didn't ask him.
Did you meet with Manny Moore?
No, I didn't meet with him. No.
You discussed the coverage, Snyder Road and all that about it.
Yeah.
He supports the bridge. Have you talked to Snyder at all?
No, I haven't had a chance to connect with him, because we were, I connected with Beth. You got to give me credit, Beth. I was in the middle of all these meetings, and Beth called. I said, you know what, I'm going to call Beth back. But, and I taught, Colin Jackson is a really good guy, so he called. I said, I'll call him back, but those were the calls I returned. I didn't get a chance to talk to the governor. I'm looking forward to talking to him, though. But I will say, if President Trump can get a better deal, because President Trump has another tool, which is this presidential permit. If he can use that to negotiate an even better deal, and we can get revenue from it, and we can get the Canadians to finally stop taking advantage of our dairy farmers and our liquor producers and many other tech companies, and we can get fair trade with Canada, and we can get revenue for Michigan or the United States. Let's take a look at that. Let's give President Trump some room to make a better deal, just like he's been doing on so many trade deals. Yeah.
When it comes to getting the budget done on time at this juncture, do you foresee or support any legislation instituting taking this into July 1st?
Yeah, I put that up on the board last year. I put up a vote to, I like Mike Duggan's idea. If the politicians can't get their budget done on time, then the politicians shouldn't get paid. And if you remember, every single Democrat voted no on that. The Democrats want to keep their pay and not do the budget on time. But I put that up for a vote. It failed. So we know where the Democrats are on that. Couldn't get it passed.
Would you be prepared to put it up again this year before July 1st?
Generally, when I put something up and it fails, I don't like to put it back up. I did that on the cell phones. Mark Tisdale did a really good job, and we saw that bill signing yesterday, and isn't it interesting which day the governor picked for it? But Mark Tisdale was there yesterday, proudly representing us. He did a lot of work on the bill to ban the cell phones in the classroom. We need our kids focused on their education, focused on reading and math. Everyone talks about the third grade reading scores. The 8th grade reading scores are very bad too, very bad. They're all bad, reading and math. We got to get our kids focused on instructional time, listening to their teachers, not distracted. I think we made some strides towards doing that. I moved that. But that was really because Mark Tisdale kept working that issue, forging consensus, and he got a deal, and I backed him 100% on that. He did a great job. And I was happy we could get that to the governor's desk before the State of the State. And I was happy she signed it, even though she picked the day she knew we weren't going to be there to sign it. But at least it's signed. You see what I mean? That's the stuff that happens in the campaign year. The governor won't meet with Trump anymore, and she does these bill signing on days she knows we're not there. But, I'm not going to get super political right now. I think that we should really try to do something on healthcare reform, lowering the cost of healthcare, property tax. There are a lot of things we can do, but I'm not optimistic on this one because I think the Democrats will block it. Now, we are going to keep working to ban the revolving door. You all have seen the Sam Singh retention bill. We're trying to keep Sam Singh in the Senate. I'm very hopeful that Winnie Brinks will endorse it now because, we want to keep Sam Singh. But we've got to stop the politicians from leaving and becoming lobbyists. That's going to be a focus for me this year. I heard these fake pundits on the MERS podcast. I'm probably going to tweet about that later, but these fake pundits on the MERS podcast. And this is what we're up against in Lansing is you listen to these insiders and well, I think that there's a lot of sense to the politicians becoming lobbyists, and you listen to this and you're like, nobody in our state except for Lansing insiders think this, but we're up against the Lansing insiders. I actually think the lobbyists should endorse the bill to ban the politicians from becoming lobbyists. It's less competition for them. you know? And then secondly, how many of these Democrats are actually going to be good lobbyists? Not very many. Sam Singh might be the only one that would probably be a decent lobbyist, but we need him in the legislature. But most of them would be horrible lobbyists. I mean, look at their roster. I don't even think these people take meetings. I mean, I haven't even met most of them, to be honest. You remember, you can't get meetings with them. They don't talk to the press. They're not doing very much. This is not a group of people that you would hire to be lobbyists, but the problem is they all think they're going to be lobbyists. You see Michelle Lang and many others looking at it. Michelle Lang, who was the DTMB director, just became a lobbyist. I think you're going to see more of the Whitmer administration officials trying to become lobbyists. So I think this is a ripe issue right now to talk about, and my hope is by the end of this year we will ban the politicians from becoming lobbyists, and then Sam Singh will have to make more deals with me in the future. All right, well, enjoy the governor's budget presentation. I'll see you guys probably next week.